Hey, thank you very much, Louise, and hello everyone, and welcome to OTF Connects. We are very happy to be back and absolutely delighted with the rich program that we're planning for the new year. So stay posted for that. We'd like to thank each of you for giving of your own time to join us tonight. It's wonderful to have representation nearly across the province, a strong representation in the South. And it's always wonderful to have new participants joining us. So welcome everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome Kyle Pierce, who will be facilitating tonight's webinar, Making Math Student-Centered Through Inquiry-Based Interactive Tasks. Kyle facilitated numerous webinars for us last year for OTF Connects and always brings a wealth of knowledge and many effective and useful strategies to share with us. So welcome, Kyle, and I will now pass the mic over to you.
All right, thanks, Surya. Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. As you may or may not hear in the background, I'm dealing with what many of you are probably dealing with at this time of the evening if you have young children. I know Andrew was saying he managed to get his kids down. Mine are not being so helpful this evening, but we'll thank them later. We'll get ourselves started. I'm going to start our screen share. Hopefully it will work. And I'm going to hit the resume button. And if we could just get I'm going to throw up some yes check marks if you want to put that into effect here to see if you guys can see my slide deck okay. So if I can see a couple of those green arrows go up and make sure, all right. Excellent. So everyone, it looks like everyone's slowly hitting that green check mark. Awesome stuff. So we're going to get ourselves going. And the first thing that I'm going to have us do, we're talking tonight a little bit about making math student-centered. I'm also going to be going into some of the things that are on my mind in my classroom, some of the challenges that I've been facing as a math teacher, and hopefully that will resonate with some of you out there as well. So what I've been using lately is actually a new tool called Gameshow by Knowledgehook. So to get us started, just to try to get everyone in, if you want to open up a new browser tab, you can use any browser you'd like. It could be on a tablet as well or on a phone. And I would even recommend if you have if you're on your desktop, let's say, or on your on a computer of some type and you have a mobile device with you, you can actually do it on that mobile device, so even on a phone. So if you want to do that, and just head to playkh.com, and what we're going to be doing at playkh.com is we're going to be using a game pin to join a game show I've created for you. So I'm going to give you a second here to pull that up on your screen. And as you're pulling that up on the screen, you'll notice you'll be asked to insert a game pin. And the game pin we're going to be using is JAM829. And as you're doing that, I'm going to ask all of you very nicely not to call CAS on our household, because it sounds like my daughter is being murdered. Hopefully she is not. But once you're there and you type in JAM829, that's going to be our game pin for the evening. I have that game show set up for you, and once you're in, you should notice that it will likely bring you right up to a screen that will say question 1, are you in? And while it's a little difficult in a webinar, I hope you'll believe me that when you start to join the room, on my end, I can actually see that we have, it looks like about 5 or 6 of you logged in so far. It does take a second. It's going to ask you for your name. You can, make up a name if you want tonight. Usually it says first name and last initial, and that's for privacy reasons for the student. However, you can actually have this where if you're using it enough in your classroom, the students can actually create an account so that they're essentially logging in with the same account each time. Lots of benefits with this tool, and we'll explore those as we go through the evening. I can see we have 13 people in, and it looks like 9 people are actually logged in. All right. And awesome stuff. So people are logging in. Right now, the first question is just saying, are you in? Just to make sure that you are there. And it sounds like we have a question. So Louise, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to double check, make sure you could see the chat. If you can't, then whenever I see a comment in there, I'll jump on and share the question. So some people are encountering an option that says to select account.
Awesome
and
stuff. Oh,
David has replied as join as a guest.
You know what? Yeah, I'm sorry. I should address that. They just released a new update to the website, and I think there's a bit of a bug. When you go to this page, you'll actually have to scroll down to the bottom and hit join as guest. Right now, for some reason, it is like showing some of the previous people who have played in the game show right now and asking them if they want to actually almost quickly log in. So that's definitely a bug that they're working very hard right now to solve. I can see we have 21 people in, so that's a good sign that quite a few people have probably just kind of played around and noticed that button at the very bottom. So that bug again should be taken care of, I hope, in the next couple days. So right now we're just making sure that you're getting locked in. And again, if you are using the same device, you'll have to do, I guess, a little bit of jumping back and forth when we're ready to do some of the game show pieces. Up on my screen right now, if you can still see that through the Connect webinar, you'll notice that I just have a couple screenshots of what it looks like on my end. I should also mention Game Show is actually a completely free tool, which is really awesome, and it does come with ready-made material. So you'll notice there's a ready-made tab, and that actually is all linked to Ontario curriculum. They have curriculum from grade 3 to 10 right now, and they're working to go all the way up to grade 12. So you can actually pick questions and content right from there, or you can use the custom tab like I've done here, and you can create your own and then press play. And once you press play, your students can then join. You'll notice my game pin is JAM829, and that pin will remain the same. This is a course code that I've created for my presentations, and they'll automatically generate a code for you. Once you press play, it gives you some options, and one of the main features that I love for math class is that this isn't like Kahoot or like some of these other Socrative or some of these other clicker-based tools where you're pretty limited in the type of responses that you can receive. You'll notice that the first option they give you is that you can upload a solution, and I always leave that on because I want to see my student, the thinking of my students. So we'll play with that tonight for those who are able to upload a solution based on the device that they're on if they have a camera. And then once again, when I'm ready, I go ahead and hit the Open Waiting Room button, and once that's done, I just start the game. So once people are joining the room, I just start that game, and that first question will fly down to you, and I get to kind of control the pace as we go. On your end, you pick an avatar, and you'll notice that on the game show or on your device, it will actually say that you're in and you're just waiting for the game to start. So I've started that game, so that's why that first question has dropped into you. And finally, once you submit an answer, you have the option to actually share a solution. So you can go ahead and upload a photo by taking a photo, or if you're on a tablet, you can take a screenshot and then upload that as a solution. So pretty cool stuff. On my end, I'm going to go ahead and end this question. And you'll notice that on your screen, it should, because it's just a survey question, it should just say, thank you for answering. And we'll wait for that next question to begin. But I'm going to hold off on that next question. You're all logged in. I'm going to ask that you don't close that window down because we are going to come back to it throughout the session, okay? If by chance that you accidentally close the window, you could just head back to playkh.com, and that game pin, I'm going to have it up on the screen quite a bit this evening, okay? So if you lose it, you can always jump back in. There's no problem there. All right, so we're going to have that waiting for us for a few interactive pieces throughout here. This is the first time I've used it in a webinar format, so definitely bear with me here. I've got the Blackboard working as well as my slide deck as well. So excellent. It looks like in the chat we have a few people few people asking questions. Right now, if you wanted to upload a solution, you definitely could. I see 3 people did. Someone uploaded a solution that says I'm in, so I can see this and actually share it on the projector for my students. So later in the session, I'll actually go ahead and share my entire desktop to share some solutions out. So a few people were kind of playing with the upload signs, and someone was actually pretty funny with the some sort of message that they saw a sign, it looks like, in a bathroom, which maybe we'll share out later in the evening, and it looks quite funny actually. And that was Bender who uploaded that, so good job, Bender. So carrying on, I just want to give you a little background of who I am. Some of you may know me from connecting at conferences, so I definitely recognize a few names. Andrew is one that jumps out at me right away. We connect on Twitter quite a bit. I see Nathan as well, who's someone I connect with quite a bit. Oh, Sherry Pope as well. Awesome stuff. So I'm sure there's others in there that just don't have their last names up, or I'm just not seeing. But I'm from Bell River, Ontario. That's just outside Windsor, Ontario. And I'm a math teacher in the morning, so I teach one period of math, grade 9 math currently. It's the academic course this semester, but typically I teach grade 9 applied students, and I do some work with Apple Education as well as the Google Certified Teachers program. So some fun stuff there. But what I want to talk to you before we get started with our student-centered piece is this problem that I've always seemed to have since I started teaching. And, oh, Andrew was at Bell River. That is just awesome. That is great stuff. Bell River is actually my first school that I taught at for 5 years, so we'll have to chat more about that. So good stuff. Yeah, so I'm about a golf ball drive from the high school. And this is the problem I had back when I was at Bell River High School teaching. I used to teach data management, and I used to drive into work knowing that one of the days coming up, I was going to have to introduce this topic to my students. And while the content tonight is going to be nowhere near related to this particular topic, but this correlation coefficient formula was something that used to really bother me, because as soon as I would introduce it, I would get all kinds of faces in my class that looked kind of like this. And my issue was that, you know, how could I actually make this interesting to my students? How could I make math class something more than just formulas and algorithms and procedures? And I really struggled, especially with this high-level content. So if we have any teachers teaching even grade 10 academic, things get kind of abstract. But especially 11 and 12, it's a real struggle trying to make it relevant. So I went back down to grade 9, and I said, you know what, I want to start here, and I want to see what can we do in grade 9, and specifically down in elementary from grade 5 to 9, and really try to see how we can change things. This is the type of note that I was using for quite some time. You know, I was very structured, very organized. So I would be teaching fractions and percents, and you know, I would define everything and give examples, and really just doing what I thought at the time was my best bet to help students be successful in math. But over time, I realized that students weren't really interested in what I was sharing with them when I was writing it up on the chalkboard. So I went and I grabbed this projector that was in our school, in the school library, and I signed it out for the entire year, and I went completely digital. And this is an example of a PowerPoint slide that I had used. So I made the huge rookie mistake of, you know, using the teacher theme, right? You see the crayons there and everything, and basically all I did was take my written notes and I typed them up and tried to make them a little bit more colorful. And what really happened there was ultimately I saw the engagement increase, but I didn't look deep enough to see what kind of engagement that actually was. And what I realized over time was that I was getting some behavioral engagement, meaning that students were actually, you know, looking, they were quiet, they weren't, you know, fooling around while I was turned around writing on the board anymore, because now I was spacing them. So while there was a benefit there, I definitely wasn't getting an intellectual engagement that I was hoping for. You know, looking at what I was doing, I ultimately was substituting that note, that former note that I had handwritten, and I just typed it up threw it up on a projector, tried to make it colorful, and again, I did get some functional improvement. I did augment my lesson, but I didn't do anything transformational to really change what was happening in the classroom. And furthermore, as I sort of dug a little deeper here, what I realized is my math class looked an awful lot like this on a regular basis, right? I would come into class, we would take up homework, make sure everybody was good. Then I would be, felt the obligation as the teacher, like it was my duty to make sure that I was the one giving students those definitions, those formulas, procedures, algorithms, the steps, right? Whatever you want to call it. I call it now the gatekeeper of knowledge, right? I felt like the students didn't know anything until I opened my mouth. And then finally, I would, hammer them with a bunch of examples. And this was out of love, right? Like I was giving them as many different examples as I possibly could so that they wouldn't struggle with the homework that I would assign later. But what I realized over time, again, is that what I had in my class was essentially two groups of students, right? I had that group that, I felt pretty comfortable. Hey, they know what they're doing. They're on track. Maybe they weren't not a 95 student, but man, they put in a good effort and, they did fairly well in the course. But then there was that other group of students that, they either didn't want to be there, they weren't, were unable or unwilling to kind of put in that effort. And I was trying to figure out, what was actually happening in my course. And for me in particular, and this might be different in your classroom, but what I realized is that, I had certain ideas of what I had for characteristics, a certain idea of what characteristics a good math student had. So what I want to do now is take a second and swing back to the game show for a second. I'm going to go ahead and hit next question. And you're going to see, first off on your screen, if you flip back to that tab for a moment, you're going to see a leaderboard, which is another great, cool feature of Game Show. Kids really like it. They don't show the entire class because they don't want anyone to feel bad, but they, want to pump some tires and, hopefully get some students up there to get excited about what they're doing. But when I click next, what you're going to see on your device, what should come down automatically is question number 2. And what I want to know from you right now is, that group of good at math students that, you could probably identify a handful of them in your head in your own classrooms right now. What are some characteristics that those students have when they're good at math? So on your device, if that question 2 hasn't come down yet, you definitely want to hit the refresh button, which if you're on an iPad, it's a little arrow, kind of like a circle with an arrow on it. Definitely give that a shot. If you're on a Chrome device, the refresh button's up in the top left of your screen. But that question number 2 should come up, and what you'll notice is there's going to be a text box on your screen, and we're going to have you can even just use commas to separate, what are some characteristics? I know for me, I'll give one to start us off, but, something that I think a student who's good at math is persistent. They don't give up on questions. So type in a couple characteristics that you have, and when you're ready, you can hit the go button. And I'm going to play with the screen share and see if I'm able to actually screen share my web browser so you can see what I see as the teacher on my end as well. I think I might have accidentally ended application sharing instead of just switching windows, but we'll see what we can do here. I see some answers coming in. I got 15 out of 29 in there. Definitely encourage you for this session to engage via the game show because, again, super cool tool. It really helps me. Later when we get into some of the math topics as well, the upload solution is really going to be useful for us, especially because we're all in different rooms. It's not like, we can just take a picture with our phone and share it over a projector. So I'd like to share that out with you if possible. So I'm going to see if I can get that application sharing back up.
And while you're doing that, Kyle, I'm just going to jump in for a second and make sure I put a comment in the chat. If any of you did not get into the game show, if you're still stuck on the screen somewhere, let us know.
Yeah, excellent. And again, if you do accidentally log out of Knowledgehook, you can head back to playkh.com and then put in Jam 829, and that will put you back in. Again, you want to scroll down all the way to the very bottom and tap guest or join as guest when you get to that page. And application sharing seems to be lagging for me a little bit here.
Kyle, I'm going to try exiting us back out to the whiteboard completely and then ask you to kind of start fresh and see if that helps.
Perfect. And the rest of the way, I'm going to probably share the desktop so I can swing back and forth. So hopefully that will work. All right, I think I have my whole desktop sharing now, but that's okay. I think we're going to have to make it work. Is that okay? Can you guys see my screen right now with Gameshow, if we can get a couple check boxes there? Awesome. I see Dave has got it up there, and Sam. All right, great. Lots of check boxes. Awesome. So this is what it looks like on my side, and typically what I do is I actually project my laptop to the projector so that when I press end question, what you'll get is a slightly different experience. So as a student, you're going to get something on your screen because, again, it's a survey question we just did. It should just say thanks for participating. And then on my screen, what we get to share out is all kinds of different responses. And you know, while it's showing kind of the percentage of people that have selected, in this case, obviously it's highly unlikely you're going to get anyone who would type in the exact same sentence. But this could be very useful if, let's say, you had students trying to estimate a number, which we're going to be doing later, and so forth. So here I see tons. I see mental computations, resilient, use of multiple strategies, they collaborate, flexibility with numbers, eager to participate, math language, open problem solving, thinking differently, growth mindset, like all of these things are awesome. Love seeing curious. That's something that you know, I'm really focusing on in my class, trying to figure out, you know, what really, you know, is it that draws people into math. Patience, stubborn. I like the word stubborn because, you know, you really do have to be stubborn if you really want to, you know, see it through and be persistent. Not afraid to ask questions. Like, there's tons and tons of great stuff. And, you know, I hope you folks don't mind, but I'll probably steal some of those and store those because I will get to keep this information at the end. But ultimately, you're absolutely right. However, when I looked at my class, when I swing back to the slide deck here, when I looked at my class, what I was actually finding in my own classroom was that I wasn't really assessing students based on those same characteristics, although in my mind I could tell you those were characteristics that I wanted for my students. That wasn't really what was defining a good student in my class based on the mark, right? And you'll notice I didn't bring up the word mark because I didn't want to send you down that road. But for me, students in my class that had higher marks typically had some characteristics, some of those that were listed, but mostly it was students who could memorize the stuff that I told them to do, right? And again, you know, maybe people are way ahead of where I was, you know, over these past few years, but I'll tell you, I would give those examples, and man, would my tests look an awful lot like those notes and like the homework questions. And not that that's a bad thing. However, I just realized that the students in the not good at math group, or the not good at memorization group, as I now call them, some of those students, you know, they were unable to do that same memorization, and some of them were unwilling to. So that's the group that I was really focused on, is the students that just weren't willing to put in that effort. I often think about how many times I told a student, if you only would have studied the night before, you would have done better. And I try to think of what was I really saying to my students when I mentioned that. And what I think of is I was saying that you can cram and basically in one night be able to get your math, you know, knowledge together so that you could get a high mark. But to me, a student who's strong in math shouldn't need to do that cramming, that last minute cramming. So that's really where I'm focusing on moving forward. And my biggest concern was the fact that most of the students in the not good at memorization group, and a good chunk of those even in the good at memorization group or good at math group, all seem to struggle in one area. And some of you mentioned it as a characteristic of someone who's good at math. And it was the area of struggling with unfamiliar problems. And for me, that was huge, because if students could not solve an unfamiliar problem, then that means they aren't good problem solvers, right? I used to get students who would come to me and tell me that I was unfair if a question on a test didn't look fairly similar to what they had seen in my note, or in an example, or in the textbook, or in the practice set, or wherever it was from. It was almost like I was ripping them off somehow. And what I realized is that that's not what I want for my students. I want them to really want to tackle new ideas and new problems. So that's where I kind of began this journey on trying to go student-centered. So I started thinking, what's my vision for mathematics education? And I want to share that with you today. First off, what I really want to do is I want to try, where possible, and it's not always possible, and I would argue that it's not appropriate in every case, but I really try when I can, especially in middle years math, to try to pull context and try to introduce concepts with context, as opposed to introducing concepts that are abstract and then introduce the context later. Right? Students tend to struggle with word problems, and I wonder if it's because we give them very raw abstract mathematics prior to giving them some sort of context to tie it to. So I want to do that right at the beginning, and I want to try to make it as visual and in some cases concrete as possible, so that students really have something to visualize and something to connect some prior knowledge to. And then finally, I want to show how math is interconnected. So rather than teaching a specific strand for 2 weeks, I want to now try to show how they're linked. How can we link these things together? Why is this important? And how can we make some of those connections? And I feel that if we do this, what we're going to do is we're going to see an increase in student confidence. The big one that I really am excited and hopeful that we'll be able to change is I really would like to see student perception of math change. And then finally, I feel if confidence and perception changes, then possibly student success will also change as a byproduct. Okay, so I'm not aiming right for the student success piece, because I feel like we all know how to make students successful on a test. We don't necessarily know how to make them successful at being, good math students, those students that we want in that group that we were referring to. So a lot of people think that I'm pretty crazy, and that's okay. That's mighty fine, and I'm sure I'll be long retired, and we'll still be talking about a lot of these same problems. But I'm hoping that we can at least put a dent into it, because especially I find in math, math, we talk about change, but eventually change, we're always talking about it, and I feel that people become immune to change, right? And that's where the math wars come from, and all of these things. And what I want to do is I want to find a way to change how we teach math, but I don't want it to be something like gimmicky, right? And I've done all the gimmicks, and I still do them because I think they're funny, like making pie, right? And this one's not one that I've done, but it's funny, but it's not actually going to change our math students or how students enjoy math, because the math is still there. This is something we're layering over top. It's kind of smoke and mirrors. We could show them TV shows, right, that use math to try to solve problems. My only issue was, if I show an episode of Numbers, the next day the kids are saying, why can't math class be like Numbers? Right? And maybe it can. Maybe I need to work harder to make it like that. But again, Numbers itself is not going to help us change. And then finally, we could even do some math rap. And what I'm going to send down to you now is actually the next question. So you'll see up on your screen here that there's a link to a YouTube video. So I'm going to have you guys click on that link. If you haven't seen the new problem yet, we'll have you refresh your Play KH screen, and then we'll have you click on that link where it says click here to watch. I'm not going to click on it because I don't want to lag us down. But when you're all done watching that video, just go ahead and hit that finished watching video once that about 30 seconds of that little rap video finishes for you. So I'll give you 30 seconds to check that out. So as you can see on my screen, if you're swinging back, there's about 10 folks locked in. I'm sure there's a few other folks that are just, probably wanting to watch more than 30 seconds. It's actually a very funny video. Definitely something you might want to use in your class, but again, it's not the solution we're looking for, right? At one time, I thought that these funny math videos, was going to be enough to kind of suck the students in and have them enjoy it. I think what it did, it definitely helped me with my rapport, right? Students thought, hey, Mr. Pierce, he always has these funny, wacky videos, which is great. And, I'm not trying to demote that by any means. But again, it wasn't solving the actual problem that I was looking to solve. So again, classic video there, definitely worth checking out with your class at some point. So I'll swing back to my slide deck here, and basically the point that I'm trying to make with you here, we talk about all these things. We can have some fun in math class and do all these fun and engaging or entertaining things, I should say, but that doesn't necessarily make students engaged in math. So I just want to, I guess, make sure that we're clear on that we can have fun with our students and we can, build our rapport with our students, but it's not necessarily going to solve the problem that we're looking to solve. The piece that I realized in my math class that was really making students lean towards memorization was the introduction of an algorithm, right, or a series of steps. And, I don't want us to not teach students the beauty of an algorithm, because I see that algorithms are beautiful. It's amazing that you can apply a series of steps to situations that fit certain conditions, and every single time that algorithm's going to work. Like there is something beautiful about that pattern, right? That's what math is. It is patterns. But I just question how quickly we jump to the algorithm, right? Do we jump too fast? And I know for me, I jumped way too fast. I was that gatekeeper of knowledge where I gave you the steps, and before I gave you the steps, there was nothing you could do with that topic. And what I realize now is that's definitely not true. So what I'm going to have you do now is watch a complete video. So I'm going to send this down to you from Knowledgehook again. So I'll end this last question here that you guys had finished watching the video. There should be a question 4 with a new link for you, and it is a Keurig video. So I'm going to have you watch it. It's a short 30-second commercial, and when you're done, you can hit that finished watching button. So it looks like most people are coming down the stretch here. It looks like 21 out of 29 have finished watching the video, which is awesome stuff. The whole point here with that piece, at the end there's a line where basically it is saying how simple it is to make coffee with a Keurig. And I thought this was really, really, resonated with me anyway when I was walking through the district office and I realized I saw this Keurig coffee maker sitting on the table. And you'll notice there looks like a nice little workstation, a bunch of K-cups in a basket. And right away I was thinking, you know what, I think I'm going to make myself a nice Keurig coffee. Nice and simple, nice and easy. And then immediately I look up and I see this note up here. And if you're like me, I sort of stopped in my tracks and I was thinking, you know what, it probably says if you haven't paid to the coffee fund, leave this alone, or, clean up your mess after. I just wanted to make sure that, I wasn't overstepping my boundaries here. So I took a closer look, and this is what I was up against. And fairly quickly, what you realize is that we have an algorithm or a set of procedures in order to actually use the simplest coffee maker in the entire world, right? And I mean, if you're not a Keurig fan, Tassimo, same deal, right? These very quick and easy ways to make coffee. And the part that really, really scared me was the fact that there was actually 7 full steps. And I don't know the last time you've checked a Keurig machine, but when I look at a Keurig machine, this is the same model that we have in our house. There are only 2 buttons on the entire machine, and we have a Keurig algorithm that requires 7 full steps. So my problem here was, we've got an algorithm for something that seems so simple, and I stopped and I thought to myself, and I thought, who is this algorithm made for? Who created it, and why did they create it? Was it for the end user? Was it for me as the person making the coffee? Or was it the secretary who didn't want to be bothered anymore with all the questions? And I started to think back to my classroom, and I started to think about all of the notes where I had steps listed for my students to follow. And I thought to myself, am I doing these steps as a way to help the student or as a way to make myself feel as though they know how to do math? And that's when I sort of stopped and I thought, you know what? I really need to start changing how I'm doing things in my class, because I definitely know algorithms don't necessarily equal engagement. And I think looking at this algorithm, I think you'd agree. Some of you probably didn't read all 7 steps. I wouldn't expect you to. But if that's what math class looks like, I don't see that being engaging. And the other thing is that algorithms don't necessarily mean that students understand what they're doing. And that's the point, that's the part that I'm really, really struggling with, is for how many years did I essentially set students up to allow myself to have the wool pulled over my eyes? How many students actually were getting high marks and putting themselves in the good at math group when they didn't have a full understanding of what they were doing? So that's where that vision came from. And going with that vision, what we're going to do now is we're actually going to jump into a task. I think we'll skip right into it now. So again, if you're not in the room yet, again, we'll playkh.com, and there's the same game pin. So you guys should all be set up. And what I'm going to do for you, again, rather than me playing the video, if this was my classroom, I would play the video up on the screen and have everyone watch the video together. But because we are all in different places, and again, I don't want to have any issues with lag, I'm going to end this question, and I'm going to go ahead and click next question and give you guys a second to go ahead and watch the video that's up on your screen. And when you're all set, you can hit the Ready to Move On button. All right, it looks like most people have locked in saying that they have watched the video. So I'm going to go ahead and end this question. We're going to stick in the play cage window for another moment here. I do have it looks like an upload to share, so just as a heads up, that upload feature, which we are going to be utilizing in just a moment, when you click on that, I can go ahead and I actually share that out over the projector. So right here, I have someone who's definitely helping us out with a little bit of humor tonight as we try to learn a little bit of math. Something else that's really cool, let's say the image comes in and it's not, if it's not, right side up, you could actually rotate it using the rotate button, and you can also reveal who it is. So since this is funny, and I don't think it's going to, ostracize anyone in the group, I'm going to press reveal, and it's our friend Bender again. So good job, Bender, with sharing out. But in the next question, we're actually going to have you guys do a little bit of math. So I'm going to go ahead and press next question, and I want to know from you, what are you wondering after watching that video? What's a question that you have about this video? And you'll notice I used to tell students, what's the first question that comes to mind? But I'm starting to try to reword that a little bit. And I want students to kind of give me an idea, what's something that comes to mind? Not necessarily the first thing, because a lot of times people will think of the same first question. So thinking about it, I always ask them, can you think of a unique question that you could come up with here? So when you have that, you can go ahead and type it into the text field and press go. You don't have to upload a solution, but if you want to be creative and add some humor to our session, obviously appropriate humor, you can go ahead and do that. And once we have some people locked in, we'll share out some of those questions. As those questions are coming in here, I should also mention, obviously, in a webinar situation, this particular feature isn't so useful because we did have the chat box to work with, but trying to sort of emulate what you could be using this for in the classroom. And for me, I really like it. As students are typing them in, I'm also asking them to share it out verbally, so it's not a silent process. It's typically discussion. But what I also find is that sometimes students who are not so willing to maybe verbalize their question, sometimes they want a little reassurance, right, that their question is okay. And, I'm trying to help students see that. Every question is a good question. But sometimes when I pick it out and I just ask, whose question was that? The student will raise their hand and then give a little bit more detail into it. And maybe that might have been a student who wouldn't have volunteered their question typically. So lots of cool things we can do here. So I think we have 18 or 19 in. I'm going to go ahead and hit the end question button. I think we're getting the idea here. And I'm sure we'll have lots of great questions generated. So taking a look at how many of each color, how many Smarties in total, is that real wood or laminate? It is laminate, I will tell you that. That's in my office downtown. And what's the ratio of pink to purple to blue? Love that question. What's the average number of Smarties in each color? How fast did those candies fall on the table? More ratios. Where are these colors from and what candy? Interesting. I'll tell you that they were called chocolate lentils from the dollar store, and they tasted horrible, especially after putting them all over a public table. Not very good to eat. We've got probability, so you can see all kinds of great questions are being formulated here. And it's great because what you now have is a record of these questions, and it's possible that later you might be able to go back and come back to some of them and also give some credit. So very, very cool stuff. Awesome participation as well. So I appreciate that. So now what I'd like to do is I'd like to give you guys a little bit of information here. And the question I did not expect anyone to come up with, which is sometimes happens in my class. Students know sometimes it's obvious and sometimes it's not. In this case, I want to know if sharing amongst 4 people evenly, how many chocolates should each student get? All right, so of those chocolates that were poured on the table, now you do not have enough information. So what I want from you right now is a prediction based on what you saw, how many, and I'll encourage you just to put in a number. It could have decimal, it could be a decimal number as well, but or a rational number. But try to eliminate words, because this is a case where, for example, if someone puts in, 28 and somebody else puts in 28, it will actually tally that up. So it's kind of cool. Students kind of feel like, hey, I'm on a team with somebody. I could have made this a multiple choice question, but there would be quite a few answers. So I like keeping it open. I like seeing the creativity of the students as well. Sometimes students will, use fractions, or maybe they'll type it in words. So really up to you how you want to go about this. But based on what you saw, how many would each of the 4 people get? Now, something that typically gets some students in the class is sometimes students will count based on what they saw instead of thinking, wait, I need to divide this up amongst 4 people. So if there's some of you out there, that's a little, I guess, word of caution for you. How many would each person get? And we'll give you guys another, let's say, 10 seconds. And again, no real need for a solution upload. Typically, I'll just verbalize that to students. Hey guys, if it's something like a prediction, they know they don't need to upload a solution. But if it is something requiring any sort of mathematical thinking, sometimes a prediction, I might actually ask them to sort of map out, like why did you predict that? Is it just, did you just guess, or did you actually make an educated guess? So in this case, though, just for some fun, we're going to throw it out there and see what we've got. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and end that question. And it looks like we've got a range of numbers here. It looks like 8 has 6 votes. 8 has 6 votes. Nicely done there. And actually, pretty close range of numbers, right? If we're looking there. So that's another discussion we can have. Like, I usually ask students, like, how many would be way too much? How many would be not enough? And I like that everybody's sort of come in pretty close, which is pretty awesome. So now here's my question. I want you guys to check out the next video, and this is where we're going to give you some useful information. So watch it. You're welcome to watch it again. I'm going to ask, though, that you try not to pause it at the beginning. Typically, I'm in control of the video in class, so it's a little easier. But, try to take this as though you can only kind of quickly see what's happening. And when we're ready to move on, we're going to get you actually doing the math here in any way you feel appropriate. Awesome. And Louise is always ready with our direct link, which is great. Thanks, Louise. Oh, you know what? Thanks so much. I just saw Brad say no audio. Awesome. Yeah, my audio was off. I was actually talking too. I'm sorry. So as I was I was just addressing the question with for Lisa there, and these are actually a mirror image of Dan Mayer's work, and that's actually where I was inspired to start doing some of this work. So Dan Mayer definitely should be credited with all of these ideas in terms of how the questions were created. So in this particular case, I was talking, and I did summarize what was happening here. So I don't know if the mic was on for it, but ultimately what you had was all of our candies in 3 even groups, and we know that 2 of those groups add up to a total of 38. So how many should each of 4 people get out of that total? So a fairly complex problem without some sort of clarification. So it looks like most are coming along. And Lisa's mentioning a great site, Mathalicious. The guys at Mathalicious are awesome as well. Definitely big fans of them, so definitely check out Mathalicious. They have a lot of Desmos integration in their work as well, which is really nice. So we're at about 19 people. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and end the question, and I'll just let you know, especially for those who are interested in trying out Gameshow at some point, when I end the question, what it does is it actually it will allow me to start sharing out solutions, but it still allows people who haven't uploaded a solution to add their solutions in. So it's not like you're cutting people out. So I think that's something that's really important to know. Like, my students will panic when I hit that end button, even though they had already entered an answer, they just hadn't uploaded a solution. So you should still have the option to upload. And awesome work. We've got 12 people out of those 19 who submitted at 14.25. And what will happen if you uploaded a solution, it will actually appear up on the screen. So it appears right now that there may not be any solutions uploaded currently. So if you're feeling up to it and you want to add your solution, it would be awesome if we could kind of take a look at some of your thinking here before we move on. So I'll give it another second, and I might even refresh my browser to see if any solutions appear. Sometimes, depending on the internet connection, sometimes that won't it won't show your solutions uploaded. So it doesn't appear that any have come in. And just out of curiosity, in the chat window, did anyone actually upload a solution and it didn't come through on my end? Because that's not typical, but I'm wondering if maybe my network, with all that's going on with the webinar, if that's happening. No, it doesn't look like any uploads. All right, so we'll go ahead on to the next question then. But again, if I can encourage you, definitely uploading that upload feature is what makes, for me, that's what makes Gameshow worthwhile, is the ability for students to share out their thinking. And maybe I'll take a moment after and sort of go through and show you some of the work that my students have shared out over Gameshow. So we do have our leaderboard, so good job. It looks like David's up at the top with, we got 2 Davids up at the top, and quite a few at 9,000, which is awesome. Oh, I see the solutions are now being uploaded. Darn. Erica, sorry, right after it, all of a sudden I got a notification saying the solution's up there, but I had already gone to the next screen, so I apologize. We'll get you on the next one. So my question now is, were you right? And on your screen, you should see another video. I'll give you a second there to hit the play button on that video and check out the actual solution. So something that makes these types of tasks, these Dan Mayer tasks, really interesting is that you actually typically will show this Act 3 or this solution. And here you'll see, I just did a little bit of fast forward, and those 57 total should be divided up into 14 and a quarter. So my question is, after you watch that video, what are some other ways that you could state the answer, 14.25 candies? Do you have any other ideas? What could it be? And as you're thinking about that, if there's some other way you could write 14.25, I'm also going to address David's question here. David's saying, how do your students share, upload their solutions? And typically in my classroom, they are actually uploading based on, in my class, they're borrowing iPads out of a cart, and my students recently have started writing on their desks with erasable marker, and they take pictures of that. Obviously, they could do it on paper and take a picture, but they really enjoy this idea of writing on their desks. And the part I really enjoy about it, not only because they get geeked out about it, but I can see from a really far distance because their writing has to be larger with the markers. So they're using their entire desk, and I'm looking at this big solution, and I, from across the class, can get an idea of how students are working. And this is something that sort of happened organically over time. One student asked one day, we were doing work at the boards. I started doing a lot of student work at the board, which really I thought was awesome. And one student one day said, "Sir, can I just stay at my desk and write on the desk?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, go ahead, try it out." And all of a sudden, everybody just bought into it. And that was last year, and this year students started doing it as well, almost like a word of mouth thing. So yeah, definitely the way my students have been doing it, but again, there's a number of different ways. All right, it's Helen saying she can't upload or can't submit her answer. I'm wondering if maybe hitting the refresh button on your device might help. Otherwise, I don't know from here, but try that refresh and hopefully that'll help you out. I'm going to go ahead and end this and take a look. We've got 57/4 is one way we could say it, 14 1/4, 14 candies each and one extra, right? I'm wondering if anyone used the word, there it is, remainder, right? So someone who said one extra, that would be kind of like the probably the student way to say remainder, right, without trying to be too formal, which I think is really, really important that we try to, help them see that, that a remainder can just be, more of a common word. So good stuff there. I'm thinking my internet connection must not be helping me out today because I saw some solutions get uploaded and yet they're not appearing here. What we'll do at the end is I'll go in the back and look at the report and we'll see if we can check out some of those as well. I'll give it another second here and see if there's any that come through. Typically it'll come through right away, but again, not seeing it. So I'm going to go with maybe our internet connection is not so great because I'm using the audio and the webinar software as well. Yeah, there you go. So yeah, hey, okay, Helen got through. Awesome, that's great to see. All right, so I'm going to end that and move on. So we have another question that I'm going to jump through here, and we're going to get you guys thinking a little bit differently. And this is where I really want to make some connections to, how maybe unnecessary an algorithm really is for students to do some great work. So I'm going to let you watch the first act of the sequel to this problem. And we'll then go out and have you type in some questions that come to mind. So this is typically the actual reason I did the first task. This is like kind of the real purpose, especially in my high school math class, this task. The other one's more of a really low level question that I can get everybody interested in, and once they're interested in, then I show them the sequel. And when you're ready, go ahead and try to type in a question you have about this video, and then we'll get going here. Mr. RG, it sounds like, yeah, awesome stuff. So you've got whiteboard desks. That's awesome. Yeah, kids love it. I don't know, I haven't fully figured it out, but I definitely noticed that students are very, very willing to take a chance versus writing, even if it was on an iPad where it's very easy to, erase or undo. Something about the fact that, when it's a non-permanent surface, they know it has to be erased at some point. So, it's like they can pretend it never happened. Yeah, there you go, that not being committed. All right, so let's check out some of these solutions or some of these questions that come to mind here. Pretty short video, I would say. And again, I do think that doing this in the classroom, having that video play for everyone at the same time, there's something, kind of magical about it. It's kind of like going to the movies to watch a movie where, you feel like you're in it together. Right now, the way I'm feeling with the webinar is I'm feeling it loses a little bit of its touch, right? I don't know where you are, and you don't know if you're ahead or if you're behind, and you don't know if other people are excited about this question or not. So there's something to be said about, having that one video play in the classroom. So typically I don't include the video in the game show. I usually just play it on my device over the screen so that students kind of are forced to look up and sort of experience it together. So let's check out some of the questions we have. So we said, is there an equal amount of each color? How many candies are in each color group? What's the ratio of pink to purple? Are they the same amount? Why did they start off screen? Interesting. Why did we drag them in? Do all the groups have the same number of candies? So lots of similar questions, especially in terms of how many of each color, proportionalities coming up here. So lots of great stuff. And recalling that there is a total number of candies of 57. I'm going to give you a second here to guess how many you think there are of each color, and then match it up with one of the statements to the right. So make a prediction. What do you think is going to happen here? Is there an equal number of blue, purple, and pink? Does one group have more than the other? Do two groups have more than the other? What do you think? All right, we have a question there. Looks like maybe a phone number. So if you'd like to go ahead and turn your mic on, you're more than welcome. Or if you want to throw the question in the chat box, I'll turn mine off for a second. Maybe that was accidental. I'm not sure. Hopefully they're not away because of that, because I put them on the spot. All right, so we have 15 locked in. So looking at this, as I go ahead and end this question, you'll notice that, or some might have noticed that it's actually very difficult in this case for us to have an equal number of all the candies, especially because of the number of 57, right? And if we check to see if 57 is divisible by 3, it is. So some people are thinking that that's actually going to be a possibility here, but is it necessarily going to be true? Some people are leaning towards one group or the other. Someone's saying the blue group has more. Maybe they thought they saw more blue or pink, or maybe the pink and purple, they thought blue had the least, right? So all kinds of options here that help us with this predicting. And basically what I'm trying to do is get students kind of sucked into the problem a little bit further and, getting them to put some skin into the game. And when we move on to the next question, I'm going to give you some useful information. You'll notice that there's no video here. Not every question needs to have a video. In this particular case, I feel like the videos we had already looked at sort of did all the hard work or all the heavy lifting for us. So right now, what I'm going to have you folks do is take a second and try to determine, based on what I've given you, and you'll notice I haven't done any teaching here. I haven't told you how to do this, but I want you to take a moment and try to figure out how many would there be in each group. If I told you there's 35 blue and purple total, there's 44 blue and pink total, and we know how many there are altogether. And again, if you do have the ability to upload a solution, definitely give it a shot. I'm really crossing my fingers that it'll work, assuming that we do get some uploads in, because I'd love to see some of the strategies. There's some what I call difficult ways or algebraic ways, some more advanced ways, but there's also some very intuitive ways we can go along with here. And as you think that through, I'm going to say thank you to Andrew for the tweet I'm just opening up here. He's advertising our current session. Awesome stuff. All right, I don't see anyone locked in, so I'm going to refresh my screen. I think we're having some internet connectivity issues on my end. As Louise said, we're getting to that point in the session, or maybe people are still thinking. And our first few brave souls are throwing something in. Now, while I do have some student exemplars to share, I really hoping that we can get a couple solutions from you uploaded here. So take a moment if you have a chance. And I'm getting some warnings on my screen. I don't know if anyone saw that, but a solution has been uploaded, which is awesome. So hopefully they'll show up on my screen. We're going to cross fingers. And we've got 8 people locked in. So I'm going to give it about another, and again, I would, in class, it makes it much easier as we're walking around, and I can see where students are, especially with them writing so big on their desk. And then working in groups and throwing ideas off of each other, it really makes the process really enjoyable. Right now, I'm actually did not anticipate how difficult it would be on my end trying to predict, where would people be at in their thinking. And I think it would probably be slower because you don't have people to throw ideas off if you're working independently. Or maybe watching some NFL football at the same time as well. I wouldn't blame you, but yeah, definitely some things to think about. All right, so we have 10 in. I think 10's good to work with. I only saw 2 upload solution options, but we'll see. And Erica's saying she's uploaded a solution, it's algebraic, and she's not sure if it's reasonable, questioning blue and pink being the same, she says. Interesting. So let's see what we have. And it says Sherry's still loading. I could dig deeper there, Sherry, and say, is it your brain loading, or is it the Knowledgehook loaning, because sometimes it takes me a while to kickstart my brain when I'm trying to solve a problem, but I think you're referring to KH. And Chris is trying. Awesome. And Sherry, her Google Drive. Yeah, absolutely. What I do find, and as a quick little tip, if you are using this in the classroom, using devices that have a camera of some type. So this could even be a Chromebook, right? A Chromebook works. Student could use the webcam on a Chromebook, just hold up their solution, snapshot, and then grab it right from there. On an iPad, it's super convenient because when they hit the button on an iPad, it'll actually say, it'll give you an option to take a picture. And if you hit take a picture, it'll actually bring the camera up. So they just take it right from there, and they don't have to go anywhere. They don't have to upload it and transfer a file or do anything like that. We've got a couple more solutions uploaded. Awesome. And then it says, do you happen to know, so Sherry's asking the snapshot shortcut for a Chromebook. I think if you go to your Google Apps, there is a camera button there if you hit in the apps, and if it's not showing up there, you'd have to add it as an app, but usually it shows up as a kind of like a built-in app under your app list. I believe it's like a green camera icon. On a typical laptop, you'd have to, I guess, know a little bit about your laptop to figure that out. For me, I would probably go to Photo Booth on a Mac. That would probably be the quickest way to take a quick snapshot. All right, so I'm going to hit the end button just to keep us moving along. So I really, really apologize if you're one of those people who's probably like right about to upload it. Again, if you enter in what you think your answer is, press go. That button will appear, and you can still add your solution as we're talking about some of the other solutions. So we'll actually see yours join the group as we go. So you're not getting cut off here. So I'll end the solution. So we've got, looks like most people have settled with 22 blue and purple, and 13 pink, or it looks like some people might be calling purple pink and purple. They look fairly similar, so the numbers are the same. So I have to assume that the colors are just swapped. But I see that 22, 22, and 13 all the way through, it appears. So lots going on here. Awesome stuff. And some people may not realize, but what you just did is a concept that we introduce in grade 10 academic, as well as in grade 10 applied math. But it's typically, a pretty difficult concept. However, it's a pretty easy concept if you start with something with a very low floor, like this question here. So I'm going to scroll over, and it's not showing up. Those solutions are not appearing, but I want to reassure you, my friends, that whatever answer you had selected, normally there would be a little icon here. It would be like a piece of paper, and it would have a number on it, and that would be where those solutions are held. So when I end this, I'm praying that it's going to be part of the report, so we can actually go check that out in a moment, because we're coming close to the end of the game show. So I'm going to hope that we can check those out, and by doing the next question, this is just a quick little survey question. How useful have you found the session so far? So we'll give you only about 15 seconds to lock this one in. Be definitely honest with me. It is American Thanksgiving, and lots of football on, so if you thought it was a waste of your time, definitely want to know, and hopefully you'll contact me in another way to help me learn how I can be more helpful in the future. So as those are piling in, I think it's usually about 20 that get locked in, it seems. So we'll go ahead and end that, and then I want to show you the report, because I think that all of your solutions should be in there, but my connection is just, I think it's holding me back from being able to show them. So, all right, awesome. So we've got lots of useful and very useful, so that is reassuring. Awesome stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and finish the game. And you may have had some sound clip that sounds like you're on a game show, and it scares me every time. But you'll notice that it's pretty gamified. So as students, if they create accounts, they'll get points and continue accumulating points, so that they can, kind of keep a little bit of friendly fun. So I'm going to go to the feedback screen, and for you, what you're going to see if you hit the next button is you'll have an opportunity to rate how you liked Game Show. Did you learn something? Would you play another game? Feeling good? And if you don't like those things, you can just hit the done button. For me as the runner or the game show host, I'm going to hit the like button, and you can also throw the comment. So what I do here is I would say I'm doing an OTF webinar, and none of the solutions would appear that folks were uploading. Not sure if it is my connection or if there was something on the KH side. Just an FYI. And these guys will actually email me back and tell me all about it. Right here, the view report, it says for a detailed report, hit done and then go to the view button for this game show. I've suggested in one of these comments that that should just be the button that will take you straight to the report. So I'm not sure why it's not, but that is that. So I'm going to press done and go back to it. And I want to pull up some of these solutions because that's the whole point of this particular task. So OTF, there it is. And I'm going to hit view. And you'll see all of my questions listed here, but you'll also see that there is a view report button. And when I click that, I'll be able to go in and actually get an idea of how people did and who uploaded solutions. So on this last, or on question 13, here's the folks that uploaded a solution. So I'll go ahead and now you get to see it's actually Erica's. So I apologize, Erica, for putting yours on the spot. But looks like Erica's actually set up systems of equations, which is fairly fairly complex, right? So I would suggest that you knew something about the algebraic way, which is awesome. That is great. But there's actually a way a student could do this without knowing any algebra. And when you check out, and when looking at, I think it's Dave or David, his solution here, he's got the total, so he's got all his given information. He says, well, pink, I know that he knows that 44 plus pink is equal to 57. Interesting. And so basically what he's done is he's done some substitution in order to replace blue and pink in the first equation with blue and pink is equal to 44. So this is like an algebraic solution, but using full words. So, but lots of logic going on here. And then he subtracted the total minus blue and pink to figure out what the opposite was. I think this was purple is what he meant here, because I think we already had the pink somewhere. Oh, no, sorry, you're just solving this equation. Awesome. So again, another really cool solution. If I go to Chris, Chris's looks like the solution didn't fully get uploaded, probably on our server side here. And then here's another one again, looking like a little bit of an equation going on. So ultimately, what I was expecting to see and what I usually see in my class looks very different than what you might have uploaded there. And what I want to show you is a couple of these student solutions. So this is a student exemplar that I want to share with you. So this one student actually just used some logic and basic arithmetic, right? So they took the total and subtracted blue and pink to get purple. Once they had purple, they just used that with the groups of blue and purple and work backwards from there. So if 35 equals blue and purple, and you know the number of purple is 13, he subtracted to get 22 blue, and then carried on over to the pink by finding the total minus the purple minus the blue, and he ultimately has solved an algebraic equation. Me as a math teacher, I would have taught it this way. I would have said, let's make some variables, let's make it really abstract, and then let's start solving this thing. And when I actually solved this the first time, I actually took a much longer route than my students did without me teaching them anything. You'll see here, and we don't have time to kind of break this down as fully as I would like to, but ultimately I'm using a lot of algebra to isolate variables, whereas the solutions we saw by David and as well as my student exemplar were very easy to follow, very easy to understand. So I guess what I'm arguing is that rather than me coming in and saying, guys, you got to follow a bunch of steps that looks really abstract like this and memorize them, why don't we have you prove to us that you have intuition and prior knowledge to work with, and then let's help scaffold them towards a better or deeper understanding. So you're looking at my solution that just never seems to end, it appears. And like, that's a pretty complex solution when you look at the big picture, right? So I don't know if you're like me, but that's pretty scary to me when I think of how I used to teach solving systems of equations. Now, as we go further, there's other ways we could have done this algebraically as well, but again, still a little bit probably more complex than it needs to be, especially when we're starting the concept. So I guess what I'm trying to pitch to you is that, you know, if we help students learn how to get there the long way, and sometimes the long way is actually the shorter way. You saw the student exemplar I just showed. That's way shorter than what I was going to do. But typically, what we're trying to do is show them more efficient methods, especially for more complex situations. So let's try to teach them how to get there the long way before they start taking shortcuts. And I guess in another way, what we could say is if we start introducing concepts with intuition first, and then only introduce algebra once students have gained an understanding and competence, I think what we're going to get is we're going to get students starting to build that confidence that they are good in math, right? They've proved it to me before I even taught them anything. All I'm there to do is to help facilitate how they can structure their thinking, how they can move towards an algebraic understanding, and help them get to that next step. But what I don't want for them is for them to think that they have to do it Mr. Pierce's way. And that's what I'm trying to, I guess, pitch to all of you today. So going back to this vision, basically, and we'll wrap this thing up because I know we only have a couple minutes here, but if we go back to this vision, what I really want to do is I want to start my lessons and my new topics with tasks, right? So every day is not necessarily going to be a task, but whenever I can, I want to make it about tasks, new concepts introduced with tasks, making them visual, making them contextual. I want to help them make connections. That's that interconnected piece. But between those two, what I'm realizing is that I really need to put and show a very explicit place for inquiry. And what you folks just did today, although many of you have the prior knowledge, but ultimately you went through a lesson that was more inquiry-based. I tried to scaffold you along a path so that you'd eventually bump into that learning goal. And once you bump into it, I want us as a group to then make those connections. And then finally, I want to help consolidate that learning, and that's where maybe some of those procedures and those algorithms might appear. What I would love is for my students to be able to be the ones to identify those steps, those procedures, right? And that's the direction that I'm going in. So while we only have a couple minutes left, I just have a couple links and resources to share with you. And the first one I will share with you is the task you just did. It's called Counting Candy and the Counting Candy sequel. They're both up on my blog, tapintoTeenMinds.com. All the resources are there. If you have an iPad, or if your students have iPod touches, or whatever it is, anything in the iOS category, you can actually enroll in a free iTunes U course that myself and a good friend John Orr have put together. We have about 38 tasks in there that are like what you just saw, and 2 of those tasks are what you saw tonight. With all the content, the videos, we even have links to some of our Google, or not Google, but game show questions that we've used, lesson plans, all kinds of great things in there. So if you type in kylep.ca/curiousmath1p, and we'll put that link up in the chat. Thanks a lot there, Louise. That course is completely free, and it is really, really efficient and easy to kind of look for tasks and then also actually run them straight from an iPad, which is kind of what we were aiming to do with that course. Within the 3-Act Math tasks, we also have a new course that was just released, which focuses on the stacking paper tasks, which is a series of 3 tasks, similar real-world problems, 3-Act Math problems, and that's available for you as well. And that course includes an iBook, which is called the Stacking Paper Tasks iBook. So another link to that as well. So again, you can access this all from the Curious Math course, but if you just want to take a look at one, a book or a smaller course like the Stacking Paper course, those are all there for you. And I think that's it for me. I'm hoping that we'll see you again sometime soon. We don't have any other dates for math sessions, but if you enjoyed this one and you're interested in learning some more, let me know what you're interested in. I'd love to be coming back in the future. And I've got a couple of those links, including a link to Gameshow for you to create your own account if that's something that you're interested in exploring. So thanks so much for having me this evening, and we hope to see you sometime soon.
Thank you so much, Kyle. And yes, certainly we will be offering quite a few math sessions in the new year. So look for those coming up when we post the new calendar. Kyle, thank you so much for sharing your ideas and encouraging the interactive tasks that certainly help engage students in math, build their comfort level and confidence when solving problems, and of course, ultimately change their perception of math. So that's, I think, what as math teachers we all would love to do. I would like to thank each of you for giving of your time to join us tonight and actively participating in tonight's session and participating in the game. So that's fabulous. Thank you. Louise will send you the follow-up email tomorrow with links to the recorded session and all the resources that Kyle talked about. I would encourage you to take a few minutes to fill the exit survey and share your feedback and suggestions with us. The link is right there in the center of the slide. We do read through all these surveys, feedback, and listen to what you say. So over the last couple of years, teachers have been asking us if we could provide certificates for participating in OTF Connect. So I'm very happy to announce that this year you will receive a certificate of participation with each session that you participate in live, that is. So here are the steps. Once you complete the feedback survey, you'll be given a prompt to create your certificate, which you can then save as a PDF and print. You can, so hope you'll have a chance to do that for yourselves and get a certificate for tonight's session. Also, I would encourage you to click on the link in the bottom left-hand corner, and that'll give you, take you to the upcoming sessions that you can still register for. I would encourage you again to share this link with your colleagues so they can too take advantage of the great PD that they can get through OTF Connect. So thank you all again, and of course, thank you to Louise, who always makes the technology work for us and keeps things together for us. So thank you, Louise. Thank you, Kyle, and thank you, everyone, and good night.
I'm just going to jump in and let people know that the link for tonight's resource page is in the chat, and you will get that follow-up email very shortly that has all those links as well. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everybody. Thanks, Louise. Thanks, Syria.